Hello. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to say I'm sorry in English and how to apologize. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to talk about is reasons. What are some reasons why we say I'm sorry? What are some reasons why we apologize? There are many reasons. I have come up with a very short list. The number of reasons why we say I'm sorry is enormous. It's very large. So this is a small list. But I thought about we often say, I'm sorry, when we are late. For example, we have told our friend, I'm going to be there at 1 p.m., and then we show up at 1:30. So we say, I'm sorry I'm late. Sometimes we might accidentally break something. Maybe we break somebody's lamp or spill something, like dropping wine on their carpet. In that case, we'd say, I'm sorry. Sometimes, maybe somebody's saying something bad about someone else, and that person finds out what was said. We call that gossip. And so you might apologize if you have said something bad about somebody. You might say, I'm sorry, if you said something rude or impolite. Maybe you were not nice to somebody, did something bad or wrong, or made a mistake. For example, maybe you had tuna for lunch with a whole bunch of onions, and now your breath smells. So when you come back to work, you might say, oh, I'm sorry, I had tuna for lunch. Maybe you ate something that has a very strong smell and you are saying, I'm sorry for that. Sometimes we also say, I'm sorry, to be polite. In these cases, we didn't make a mistake. Somebody else made a mistake. But to be polite, we still say, I'm sorry. I know it's a little bit strange, but for example, if you go to a restaurant and you order chicken and the waiter brings you beef, you might say, I'm sorry, this isn't what I ordered. So there are many reasons why we say, I'm sorry. Now let's look at some of the ways we say I'm sorry. So the word apology means the same thing as sorry. When you give an apology, it means you are saying you are sorry. Let's look at some ways to say sorry. First we have sorry, which is pretty informal. If you make a mistake with your friends or in general conversation, we often just say, oh, sorry. We might also say, I'm sorry for, and then give the reason why we are sorry. For example, I'm sorry for breaking your iPad. I'm sorry for not calling you. I'm sorry for being late. I'm sorry for forgetting your birthday. I'm sorry for not being there. What you will notice is, when we use the word for after I'm sorry, it means we are giving a reason. We usually follow this with a verb in the ing form. If we want to talk about something we didn't do that we are sorry for, we just add the word not. For example, I'm sorry for not calling. I'm sorry for not answering the phone. I'm sorry for not telling you about my problem. So, when we want to talk about something we didn't do, we use not. I'm sorry for is something we use a lot in everyday language. If we want to be more formal, imagine you are at work, you make a mistake, and you are talking to your boss. You might want to use more formal English. In this case, you can say, I apologize. For example, I apologize for breaking it. I apologize for missing the meeting. I apologize for being late every day. Just like with sorry, you can add for, and then give the reason. It follows the same rule as sorry for, where you just use the verb with ing. So, we have looked at how to say I'm sorry, and if you are in a formal situation, you can say I apologize. Now, if you are writing to somebody, maybe you have a customer and you want to say I'm sorry because your company made a mistake. Or perhaps there's a situation where you have to be very, very formal. Then what we would use in that case is something like this. Please accept my sincerest apologies. You wouldn't say something like this to your friend because it's very formal. You wouldn't say something like this to a child, but you might use this phrase if you are at work and need to write an apology. This would be a great way to do it. Please accept my sincerest apologies. Here, sincerest means your most honest apologies. So, these are 3 ways to say, I'm sorry. Now let's learn more about what else we can say when we are apologizing. So, we have already talked about how to say, I'm sorry, whether we are speaking informally or formally. Sometimes we also want to talk a little bit more about our mistake or what we did wrong. Here are some expressions we often use in English to do this. We often say, I didn't mean to. For example, I didn't mean to break your cup. I didn't mean to hurt you. Or, I didn't mean to break your heart. So we use it for a lot of different things. Sometimes we just say, I didn't mean to. And what that means is that we didn't intend to do something bad. We didn't plan for something bad to happen, but it did. We made a mistake, but it wasn't intentional. We can also say, it was an accident. Again, these two phrases mean the same thing. It means there was no plan to cause problems or hurt someone. It happened by accident, with no intention to do wrong. Sometimes, we also want to tell someone, you know what? I made a mistake. It's my fault. I did it. For example, imagine if you feel terrible. You did something wrong, and you want to take responsibility. You can say, it's my fault, which means it's my mistake. On the other hand, if you didn't do anything wrong, you can say, it's his fault, it's her fault, or it's your fault, meaning it's his mistake, it's her mistake, or it's your mistake. But when you're apologizing, it's usually because you did something wrong, so you will probably say, it's my fault. Another thing we sometimes do when we are apologizing is talk about regret. So what do I mean by this? We talk about the fact that we made a mistake, but we wish we hadn't. We wish we hadn't made it, but we did. If we could change time, we wouldn't have made that mistake, but we did. So this is regret. For example, when I was a child, one time I pushed my sister and she fell and cried. I felt really bad about it. I regretted it. I wished I hadn't pushed her. So that's what I mean by regret. We often use this grammar structure when talking about regret. I shouldn't have. This means you wish you hadn't done something. I shouldn't have said that. We use this a lot in English. When you are really angry with somebody, you say something and then you think, oh, that was a bad thing to say. I shouldn't have said that. Maybe, I shouldn't have been late. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have eaten all the cake. I shouldn't have been mean to that person. Or I shouldn't have skipped school. There's a lot of things we might regret. So the key here is to say, I shouldn't have. And then we use the verb in the past participle. So I will just put PP as shorthand for past participle. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about how to say we are sorry. So you have apologized and you have talked about your regrets, what you wished you hadn't done. The next thing we are going to talk about is, how can you fix it? When we apologize or say, I'm sorry, a lot of the time it might be for something small. But if it's something serious, we might ask, how can I make it up to you? How can I make it up to you? Is a very common expression, and it means, how can I fix this? I made a mistake. What can I do to make things right? Now, sometimes this can help. The person might say, there's nothing you can do. Or they might say, well, you can do this, or I'd like you to do that. So again, we don't say this all the time, but if it's something serious when we apologize, we might say something like, how can I make it up to you? And now, what's really important to know is, what do you say when someone says, I'm sorry? Well, you can say, that's okay. No worries. No problem. It's all right. Or, it's cool. These are very common informal responses you might say to your friends or family. Sometimes, we also say, it's all good. If someone is apologizing for something very serious, though, we might say, I forgive you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful in learning how to express apologies in different situations. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you in the next video.